And in fact, all competitions in Korea are black belt only. No color belt competitions. And I actually think it's a wonderful thing because I've seen a lot of people who, and known a lot of people over the years, some of my own students, some of my close friends who, were just starting out in the martial arts, they get like their yellow belt or something. They go to the national championship and there's nobody in their division because it's a small circuit and they fit into a weird, weight division, and they win. And they come back and they say, I'm a national champion, world champion, or national champion.
Yes, sir.
And they train for 2 months. And that happens. And that's why most veteran martial artists don't trust when people say, I'm a world champion or a national champion. It means nothing because you can work the system in a way to get that very easily.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations from the Hearth. I'm here with Master Olds this morning, and I am bringing to the table this morning, to the hearth, a question that I think might lead to a good conversation. I noticed recently on Band, you created a group called the Competition Team, and I noticed Mr. Noreen, Mr. McDaniel were in that group and kind of heading up that group. And I am curious about what makes a competitor, what the word competitor means to you, what it can mean to the school, what it can mean to the students. I just wanted to have a little bit of a conversation about that.
Absolutely. I think that all martial artists at some point need to do some competition because, while real self-defense cannot be fully simulated with competition, and you need to also do some drilling that goes beyond what you can do in a sports setting. That sport competition is incredibly important for learning how to actually apply what you know, and learning the proper timing and distancing. And sometimes you'll find things that you thought would work don't end up working, and so you can learn a lot. And once you've competed for a long time, you can almost intuit what will and will not work based on your experience of working with another person, sparring another person. And that wisdom you'll never have unless you do a lot of competition. So it's a very important thing to do. What is a competitor in Taekwondo, and also what we're doing with One Way, is somebody who is a black belt. Is really what a black belt always symbolized. And this is a really interesting topic. It's one of the reasons why I've asked Mr. Noreen and Mr. McDaniel to be on our competition team. And while we have gone to tournaments before and we brought the whole school together to do that, and we may do that from time to time in the future, the real bulk of the competition will be going through our competition team, because those are the people who really have something to prove and are at the point in their training where the next step in their evolution as a martial artist is to go out there and compete and test their mettle. And just going back to what I was saying before, that's really what a black belt symbolizes. The problem is that in the West, we have a very different concept of what a black belt is.
Yes, sir.
We think that a black belt means you're an expert. And that comes from a time where the only instructors that could teach here in America were first and second degree black belts that were returning from abroad, maybe Japan or Korea, and they came back, and in their short stint over there, that's all they could get was a first or second degree black belt. And they came back and they started promoting people. Now, you actually, as a first or second degree black belt in virtually all traditional martial arts, is not high enough to promote people. Actually, it's not considered an expert level. It's considered just a student black belt, someone who, actually over there, you wouldn't even see those people helping out at schools. You have to be fourth degree black belt or up to even work at a school. But it is somebody that you would see, at competitions competing. And in fact, all competitions in Korea are black belt only. No color belt competitions. And I actually think it's a wonderful thing because I've seen a lot of people who, and known a lot of people over the years, some of my own students, some of my close friends who, just starting out in the martial arts, they get like their yellow belt or something. They go to the national championship and there's nobody in their division because it's a small circuit and they fit into a weird, weight division, and they win. And they come back and they say, I'm a national champion, world champion or national champion.
Yes, sir.
And they train for 2 months. And that happens. And that's why
Mhm.
most veteran martial artists don't trust when people say I'm a world champion or a national champion. It means nothing because you can work the system in a way to get that very easily. I have students under my belt who are world champions, and the tournament that we went to for that particular event was maybe 100 people, and there was like one group that came from Ukraine or something, and everyone else was from that small town. It was like in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and because of her weight division and whatnot, she ended up winning, and she's a world champion,
Sure.
and I had to spar one other person, and it's like you can't compare that to a real world champion. Like these days, world championship match, you might have to spar 75 matches back to back. Like it's like a week-long event where you're just having to win again and again and again. And those two experiences are exceedingly different. All black belts, 75 matches to win world championship versus one other competitor in a thought out ice rink in the middle of nowhere.
Yes, sir.
So the point I'm trying to make is for me, it's important that people are black belts before they start competing, because if they do start competing before then, they tend to develop an ego, or a lot of times they go and they have a bad experience because they get brutalized or something, and they haven't developed that inner fire to really handle the defeat, and then they start making up excuses why they lost, like had a bad referee or whatever. And of course that stuff happens, but we look for excuses when we don't do as well as we would like, and of course we're going to not do very well when we don't have much experience. So I like to kind of get people to a certain level before I start sending them out there to compete, and also they reflect us. I want them to do well because I want us to look like we have good instruction here at the academy, and that we're really training up top-notch competitors. So they're kind of a black belt is considered like an ambassador of the school. There's someone who's going to go out and compete and champion our name. And I'm not saying it's all about us, and it's definitely about them too, and we want to build them up. But I think it's the kind of thing where if you get built up too fast, you develop a big ego. And sometimes that can hold you back from really achieving your true potential.
Yes, sir.
So, what ended up happening was, these first or second year black belts came back from abroad, and they started schools, and they started promoting people. But because they were really only a first degree black belt, they couldn't promote people to black belt, because and they couldn't get any higher themselves. So they really stretched out that experience. I think most people would be very surprised to learn, and I was myself, when after I had many years of experience, started interacting with Korea, going over there and stuff, and realized that a lot of people were getting their first degree black belt in all sorts of disciplines: judo, karate, taekwondo, aikido, in 1 year. 1 year. Now they're training 5 days a week with no exception. You have to go 5 days a week, and that's like all kids do that. Like when their work ethic over there is really nuts. Like a kid will go and he'll do taekwondo 5 days a week, and then he'll do all these different, study math 5 days a week for an hour, and he'll study science 5 days a week, and he'll study English 5 days a week, and they'll stack up all of these. So they'll do 6 hours of training after school, and one of those 6 hours is their taekwondo. And so they're working very hard. But that's as long as it takes for them to get their black belt. Now, are they experts? No, they're not. And no Korean would say that a black belt is an expert. It's our own perception that we think that these people are experts. So what's happened is the schools that are more along Korean lines, like a lot of the Korean masters, when they come to America, they try to promote Americans similarly to how they were promoted in Korea. And then people think those are McDojos because they're only getting, they're promoting them after only a few years. And then a lot of the Americans are confused and they think that a black belt means they're experts. So they're taking 10 years to get a black belt or something like that. And then it's like they're getting frustrated with the Korean guys and saying they're McDojos. And then now at this point in the stage, after, this has been going on for, decades and decades, everything's all confused and mixed up. And some schools are doing 10, some are doing 5, some are doing 3, some are doing 1. And it's just all over the place. Yes, and so it's very hard to tell. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to, break out and do one way, do my own thing, because I don't want my students to be compared. My students in here that have black belts, been training 5, 6, 7 years.
Yes, sir.
I don't want them to be compared to somebody who's only been training for 1 year.
Yes, sir.
And that's an accomplishment worthy of much more significance. And so, just trying to make that distinction. Now, I think what we need to be careful of. So in America, the industry average for a black belt is about 3 years across all disciplines. It's about 3 years. I personally think that's too little of time to really learn those fundamentals. And so, ours is a little bit longer. But one thing that I'm trying to do is simultaneously teach my students that a black belt is really just the beginning. And it does not mean you're an expert. If I was going to say my black belt is an expert and give that out, it would take someone probably about 15, maybe 20 years to get their black belt. That would be nuts. All of my students would quit. And so that wouldn't work. So that's why I'm not doing that. I could do that. I could try to buy into our perception and be like, okay, black belt means an expert. This is how long it's going to take. And they would basically be like a master. I'd be like, okay, you're an expert. Okay. But I would just shatter people's souls. Now, on the other hand, I don't want to do 1 year to a black belt because I feel like that will get us labeled as a McDojo, so that's wrong too. So I've tried to come in, we're above average, well above average with our school for our promotion credentials, but I also want to teach my students that, look, this is just the beginning. Yes, sir. There's so much more to do. And I want to push people like Mr. McDaniel, Mr. Marine, my black belts, to go out there and start competing, because that's really how you earn your degrees. Now, a lot of people don't know where the DON system comes from, but it comes from a famous Go announcer would rank Go players based on their performance. And if they could think one step ahead of a beginner, they were considered first DON, which means literally step.
Can I pause you real quick? Can you explain a little bit what Go is? Because I know what Go is, and I've read into it and then played it a little bit.
Yeah, so the game of Go is an ancient samurai game. It's very simple, just black stones and white stones, and you try to isolate your opponent's stones. It's very similar to the game of Othello, if you've ever played that game. In fact, I think that was just basically ripped straight out of Go, but it's an awesome game, and it's so simple that it has so much depth and strategy, and you can really, the way you play it is by trying to think many, many steps ahead of other people. At least that's what I'm told, because I'm not a particularly proficient Go player, but
it's so simple to learn, but it's so challenging. It's amazing. It's an amazing
it's really about outthinking your opponent, and it's really awesome. And so that's why this is so cool, because this famous Go announcer was like, this person can think 9 steps ahead of somebody else, and that's why I'm ranking in 9th Dan. And he would rank all these professional Go players, and it was around fourth Dan that was the more of the professional Go grades. And so when Jigoro Kano basically created what we know as martial arts, he got the uniform that we wear from the firefighters, and he got the belt system from the swimmers in Japan. He got the Dan system from this famous Go announcer, and he just basically bundled it all together, and we've been iterating on it in various different disciplines ever since then. Like in Korea, like a Taekwondo practitioner is a person who wears a white uniform and has a black belt. Like that is a Taekwondo practitioner. Okay, if you see a person wearing a white uniform and some other belt, that's not yet a Taekwondo practitioner. And so that's really what a black belt means. It just means you're a practitioner. In the early days of Jigoro Kano, he basically just had a white belt. And he started realizing that these people were, some of them were like really like athletes, and they were training all the time, like 3 hours a day, and they were just really good. And then some of them were like just recreational martial arts. They're coming in once in a while. And some of them been training for, several years and had good proficiency, and some didn't. And by mixing these two together, people were getting injured. Everyone knows that experience of working with a white belt, and they go for, the or toe hold, or, and hurt your knee, or, use excessive force, or, just a lot of times when you're a white belt, you're very eager, but you don't have much control yet. And then on the other hand, the black belt can't really go all out, or he could risk hurting the white belt too. So he started separating them, and he has the black belts and the white belts. And then when he started sending his students abroad to teach judo in Europe and other places, he realized, man, these guys are only training a few times a week. They're never going to get a black belt. So we need to give them some kind of incentive. And that's when the Keller belts came into play, and we started giving out the Keller belts. And so it's this is really a second, like an afterthought, with all these Keller belt divisions. You go to tournaments these days, and they're broken down into so many different, like, minuscule weight divisions. Okay. And then you have age brackets, and then you have belt divisions. And when you combine all of these things, it's unlike other sports. If you do wrestling or something, you just basically have a weight division for the most part. That's it. There's not even that much differences between the sexes, I feel like, with wrestling and stuff. It's mostly just men, and it's mostly just weight division. At least on my wrestling team, that was the case. And it means that it's fiercely competitive. But you look at martial arts, what they've done is they were like, you take your entire wrestling team, and you would divide it off into, like, people have been training for 1 year and 2 years and 3 years and 4 years and so on and so forth, and their skill level. And then you would divide their weights out, and it just gets so small that you have like two people fighting each other, and they're thinking that they're a world champion when they win. And so that's why I really don't want to go into that mode of thinking and that kind of competition. For me, competition really starts at black belt level, and it's very important at a black belt level. It is not really important at a Keller belt level, because you need to really be focused on emptying your cup, which is something that can take time for people to understand. And by putting people into a competitive situation, it can really make it difficult for them to empty their cup, especially if they win, and learn those fundamentals.
Yes, sir. So to bring it back into the dojo, but also to people who might be practicing at home, and they might not be able to come and be on the mats. What does that competitive spirit, knowing that there's competition out there, knowing that there are these tournaments that are held, and that there are these people that are competitors, that is part of their identity as martial artists. What can our students who are here at the school that might not have reached that black belt competitive standard, what can they work on in classes, or what is something that can incentivize them to keep moving toward refining their craft in that way? We've been talking a little about sparring and rolling and working through the fundamentals. And so can you talk a little bit about that culture in our school, but also that culture in the wider martial arts world for people who might be watching that aren't directly associated with our school?
So I think when you're a Keller belt, if you want to be competitive, you should focus on competing with your rival here in the school. And I don't want to create these terrible rivalries and make it a very competitive place. But I had some students, friends that I was going up with that I really love and respect, and we had a little bit of a rivalry. We're always trying to come more than the other person, and
Yes,
try to
sir.
get, like, if someone gets promoted before me, I'm like, oh, I got to get back in there so I can keep up with them. And when we're sparring, we're trying to do our best, and that can be, as long as it's done with a lot of mutual respect, and I have a lot of mutual
Yes,
respect for
sir.
those people.
Mhm.
It can be a helpful thing. I just think that at the color belt level is not really the time to start competing outside the school. It's really to focus on your own personal goals inside of the school, and really focusing on just getting those razor sharp fundamentals.
Yes, sir.
Because especially, I think it's very easy as a new students to overlook the complexity that's really inherent in every little thing that we learn on the
Yes,
floor.
sir.
I think more and more our society has gotten to the point where we can ingest so many golden nuggets so fast that we forget there's so much in there to unpack in just one golden nugget.
Yes, sir.
And I see a lot of times, sometimes I find my students saying like, oh, I wish there was more variety on the floor. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The amount of variety you guys
Yes,
are
sir.
getting is like a fire hose. Like, I'm combining like 30 martial arts into one, and I'm just firing it at your mouth. Like, you have like, there's no reason you should be complaining about not enough variety. It's like, it's too much variety, and my goal over the last like 5 years has really been trying to pare things down and make it less variety, because it's not just about entertaining people. I mean, you have to entertain them to some degree,
Sure.
but it's really about, if you want people to be good, about going deep on the basics. What was the quote of the month? Was it last month or this month?
To know 10,000 things, know one well. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. That's where it's at. And so if you are focused on competition and you're focused on that, you're going to overlook the simple things that are all around you that are really deep.
Yes, sir. It kind of reminds me of, I've been working with the students on when we're stretching, we'll come down and bend our knees, and I say, okay, now, while your knees are bent, you're in this squatted position, bring out your left leg out in front, kind of like a pistol squat. And I say, I did this for a few weeks, and everybody just was falling down all over the place. And I said, okay, this is something that they obviously want to keep trying, and I had to backtrack a little bit. And so now I say, listen, this is the kids and adult class. I say, put your hands on the ground, right? Find your stability, bring that leg out, practice it like this every time. And then once you feel comfortable, boom, bring your hands up a little bit at a time. And I feel like, there's so many metaphors and connections we could make, but that is the first one that came to mind. It's finding that really strong foundation and root before you go into the different applications of what we're doing here, right? Being able to, quote unquote, come down and bring one leg out, whether that is, this ties into something else that I've been talking with some of the staff members about, and some of the adults about, in terms of sparring and just the game, right? The game that we play, and how we are developing our own game. You've talked to me about this a little bit throughout my time here, and I think it's wonderful, because we all start with those fundamentals, but then we get somebody like Juan, who comes in, he's got such a powerful kick, and so when I'm sparring him, I'm thinking, okay, I know that he is going to be able to kick me really hard, so I'm always watching those legs, and he has realized that, and so he says, okay, Jesse, how can we work on my hands, right? Because it's all about that well-rounded.
Well, I think that's
I got a little tangential, but yes,
no, absolutely. I think you start kind of developing your own personal game around that kind of blue belt level when you start really picking up your sparring, and you start looking at, okay, well, I've been learning the fundamentals since white belt, and it's been a couple of years going through those fundamentals, and some of them I'm getting more proficient at than others.
Yes, sir.
And the ones that are more proficient, you start using a lot in sparring, and then you start developing kind of like a rudimentary game. And then at red belt level, it starts getting a little bit more complicated, and you start getting more of those fundamentals. But like I said, there's so much to learn.
Yes,
there's so much to learn. And if I can't I have tried in the past to like just fire hose it in, and it's too much, and people are like a jack of all trades and master of none. There's no way they can take it all. So, when you get to that black belt level, you're still just beginning.
Yes, sir.
You probably, have incorporated like a third of those fundamentals into your personal game. And, that journey from black belt forward is figuring out how to incorporate the rest of those fundamentals, but then also realizing there's so many more advanced techniques that you can start including into your game and developing your own specific sort of pot of tea that one day
Yes,
when you're a master instructor yourself and you have your own school, which I have no doubt that all of my students are capable of achieving, and I hope they do, they will be able to have their own unique pot of tea,
Yes, sir.
that they can pour and teach to their students. And that's really, the story of the martial arts and the story of the belts and everything like that.
Yes, sir.
So bringing it home,
Yes,
to
sir.
kind of wrap this up because we're starting to go a bit long. What is a competitor? A competitor is somebody who, in my mind, is a black belt and somebody who has enough understanding of the fundamentals that they're really to make much more to start making significant progress, continue making significant progress. They need to go test themselves against other people and see other styles. Every single person, even within the same discipline, has a unique style when it comes to competition. Now, that might not be true for martial arts that don't do a lot of contact sparring, because they just learn like a very rigid form done exactly one way and very strict curriculum. But for any martial artist who's worth his salt, who does a lot of sparring, they will develop their own unique game of fighting. And the being a competitor is all about, in the story of the belts, we say a black belt means midnight.
Yes, sir.
And you're left to ponder the stars. And in watching the stars, you find wisdom until one day you find yourself a star of your own, looking down upon your own planet, nurturing up the next generation of students. Well, those stars are those people that you meet along the way out of the competition, that you spar against, that beat you with that technique, that wand who kicks you really hard, and you learn to respect that kick, and you learn a way to adapt and defend. Those are the people who are helping you along the way. You cannot learn how to be a good martial artist on your own. It takes a group of people, a clan,
yes, sir.
A dojo to really make a good martial artist. And those people who are fiercest rivals out there at competition that maybe you're so frustrated because they won, they're your greatest allies,
Yes,
and you owe them a great amount of respect for teaching you those lessons.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys, that's all we got for you today. Let's keep training hard. If you enjoyed that podcast, please consider liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel, as well as hitting the notification bell. We offer in-person, group, and private lessons at our facility in Kyle, Texas, as well as virtual lessons anywhere in the world. If you'd like to learn more about our programs, you can find us online at risingphoenixtkd.com.